All right, let's bring in Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the President of the United States. With so much going on, the President is about, I understand, Kellyanne, to amend his schedule because of the shootings over the weekend. Where is he? Is he locked into El Paso and Dayton on Wednesday?
Well, good morning. This is something the President has done when Americans have faced tragedy in the past. He's gone to meet the hurricane-devastated areas. He certainly went to Parkland, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, after mass shootings there. And it has been his desire and his intention since he learned of these tragedies over the weekend to get on the ground and visit the people there, to thank the first responders and the medical professionals, to meet those who are healing from their wounds, to talk to law enforcement and federal FBI agents and others who are still on the ground offering resources and support. So this is what he has done, and I think you saw a preview of that yesterday here in the White House when, despite the politicization of his, I guess, of his political opponents, the President is trying to bring the country together, heal a nation, but also offer concrete proposals on how to move forward as a nation. And let me tell you something, I'm hopping mad this morning because I see very little scant coverage of the fact that this Dayton shooter has been confirmed as having a Twitter feed that was supportive of Antifa, that was supportive of Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. Obviously, 9, 10 years ago in high school, he had a kill list for boys, a rape list for girls, and there's scant attention being paid to this. People are allowing nonstop punditry by at least two of the Democratic presidential hopefuls who are mired at 0% or the low single digits.
You're talking about Tim Ryan, Beto O'Rourke?
Hey, I am, as a matter of fact, but you mentioned them. Beto O'Rourke, from the Vanity Fair magazine cover to the Vanity Project candidacy, out there screaming and cursing about President Trump. That doesn't heal a single soul. That doesn't help prevent another mass shooting. They're raising their profile. And Elizabeth Warren yesterday was raising money for Senate candidates Doug Jones and Tina Smith. She's raising money in an email appeal talking about the mass shooting. This is a disgrace, and if nobody else is going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. The President did not respond in kind. They politicized this over the weekend. They all blamed him, and I want to name and shame them now because he did not respond in kind. They want to be president. He is the president, and he's trying to bring the country together and have concrete, bipartisan, bicameral steps. The red flag laws, he's the guy who signed the Fix NICS Act into law in 2018. He did away with bump stocks after the Las Vegas shooting, where law enforcement says they never found a motive for that monster. And he's denouncing white supremacy, and they're out there denouncing him. America, take a look at it and don't forget it.
Yeah, it's not going to bring these individuals back by placing blame. We need to do something about it. Even the dad of one of the Parkland victims said these victims aren't even in the ground yet. They aren't even buried. And he was criticizing the politicians that are playing the blame game.
No, it's really terrible. And I wanted people to know that when Bernie Sanders supporter, somebody admitted that he watched a different cable network for his political news, shot up Steve Scalise, who was within inches of his life, and others on that baseball field 2 years ago. We didn't run out and say, oh, he was hunting down Republicans and a Bernie Sanders supporter. We were worried about Steve Scalise's life being saved. That was absolutely the darkest day in this White House in the first year, in my opinion. The President, the First Lady, the Vice President, the Second Lady, and others went to visit Mr. Scalise in the hospital. We didn't run around saying that for months on end. When more recently, when some evil, twisted, depraved lunatic was trying to shoot up an ICE detention center in Washington State, quoting the exact language that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had just used, we didn't blame her. So this has to stop. Let's stop pretending.
Were you surprised that President Obama weighed in? Were you surprised President Obama weighed in?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. But again, did I mention that in his presidency there were about 24 mass shootings, 3 times the number, or much higher than the number of the 3 administrations previous to him combined? Again, nobody blames him for Newtown, Connecticut. And he had his opportunity to go and try to heal the nation.
Right, and they should not. Kellyanne,
and nobody should.
No, of course. But because it is so political. And Washington really, at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, not much gets done. And so there's
they're not even here.
Well, they're
on recess. The President is here, right behind me, working today.
He is.
They're welcome to come back.
And because there is such a toxic environment right now, and Congress can't get anything done. There's a story that the president has spoken to the Attorney General, Bill Barr, about using some regulatory power or executive action to try to do something, just like he did with bump stocks regarding this. Is that on the table?
It is on the table, and he was in close contact with the Attorney General and the FBI Director over the weekend. And let me say something about FBI Director Chris Wray. On July 23rd, he testified to Congress about domestic terrorism, about the increase in arrests as goes direct to terrorism. He testified that we're about 100 arrests for domestic terrorism the last 3 quarters and about 100 arrests for international terrorism. Why is this relevant? Because after 9/11, the focus was really on international terrorism. See something, say something was about packages. But Director Wray and the FBI are also saying, see something, say something. It's not just about packages, it's about people. This guy in Dayton, Ohio, had a kill list and a rape list. The authorities could not have that information about his high school record.
He's too young.
For his when he went to procure firearms legally and got them legally. They had some traffic stop in his
That's got to be changed.
That has to be changed.
The police came in, they filed a report, apparently,
yes.
But because he was a minor, he was only 17, even though the next day after this became public, you know, in this particular town, 1/3 of the school didn't show up because they thought he was...
They were afraid.
Of course.
But this wasn't yesterday.
So
this wasn't last week.
Knew,
it was last
except
decade.
the people who sold him the gun.
Yes, this has to stop. Everybody needs to stop preening in front of the camera, stop raising money, Elizabeth Warren. I'm talking to you for Senate candidates off of this, and stand up and work with us to stop that. I wanted to say something about Director Wray. He testified about that they're prosecuting white supremacists, domestic terror. He testified on July 23rd. You know why it got very little attention? Because the next day Bob Mueller was going to testify. So you had all these made-for-TV lawyers and other self-designated experts on TV telling you what Bob Mueller would say the next day and ignoring the testimony of the FBI director on the very issues that the president was talking about yesterday. He denounced white supremacy, racism, bigotry, evil, unequivocally and specifically, and nobody paid attention to what Director Wray said. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that there was one Democratic candidate running for president. His name is Eric Swalwell. And what was his major platform? Guns. He dropped out of the race before anybody else. The Democrats who debated last week had an opportunity in their opening statements to talk about this, but they didn't. They talked about Donald Trump. And he's not talking about them. He's talking to the nation. There's a huge difference, and everybody sees it on display, between running your mouth, running for president, and being the president and trying to bring together a nation.
Kellyanne, what would the president do about the age? This guy has passed. You know, most kids get in trouble in high school for maybe drinking underage or, I don't know, taking their parents' car out after curfew or something. This kid had a kill list and a rape list, but he was too young for them to put that on his record. Would the president lower the age? I mean, if you do something that extreme, I think that needs to be on your record, even if you are 17.
Ainsley, as we know, there are kids, juveniles, 17, 16, maybe even younger, have been prosecuted as adults for murder. That may have happened to this monstrous murderer had he lived. By the way, he killed his own sister. And so that may have happened, so sure. But I think there's also a HIPAA law consideration here. The privacy laws, of course, protect us. And there are many exceptions to HIPAA that have been carved out over time. I know we've had one for the opioid crisis. We got one from HHS Office of Civil Rights almost 2 years ago now, because we have met way too many grieving families whose 18 or 19-year-old son or daughter was chemically dependent, was addicted, which is a disease and not a moral failing, and they had no idea until the child was gone dead because of the HIPAA. So there are exceptions that can be carved out. That is absolutely something that's on the table for us to look at. There is a way to protect our privacy and our constitutional rights, but still protect the citizenry as well.
Can I ask you this? Is the president backing Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal's push to adopt red flag protection orders? Does he fully back that? Did Lindsey Graham call ahead of time and said, this is what I'm proposing?
Chairman Graham and the president are in close contact about that, and we were very heartened to see that immediate bipartisan action by Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, and Chairman Graham of South Carolina yesterday. The president mentioned red flag in his specific remarks yesterday to the nation, and thank you for mentioning that. Basically, it's an emergency order where we're trying to keep guns out of violent criminals, out of people who shouldn't have the firearms, at the same time respecting the rights of law-abiding citizens and their right to carry firearms. So again, this person in Dayton, Ohio got these firearms legally. the monster in Newtown, Connecticut, whose own mother was afraid of him, used the mother's legally procured firearms to kill her and then dozens of other innocent people in that school. So, folks, instead of just screaming and raising money on this, let's think through specific examples that can be ameliorated for the next time. But the president specifically wanted to include in his remarks yesterday red flag. He also talked yesterday to senators, separately to Senators Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, looking at their legislation about background checks. So everything's on the table, but we need people to get off TV, get back to Washington, or at least come to the White House and try to work together.
Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kellyanne.
Thank you.